Okay, so last 3 weeks we have seen about the GUI design. Today we will talk about more that how we can access those GUI components within our program, and then how we can apply some functionality behind the scene. Okay. Before we can start, we have these particular specific few videos that we need to see. That's what is a graphical user interface and what is difference between the UX, that is user experience, user interface and user experience. Am I connected with the internet? It should look like. We need to turn on that particular specific audio system.
Sound of great design. That sound was made possible by electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, and even audio engineers that came together to engineer the perfect sound of speed.
Nice.
But that's not all.
Whoa.
Want to take it for a spin?
Yes.
You want to drive a Porsche?
This is user experience.
So let's see another video.
Whoa. That was awesome.
I know. The reason that we showed you guys the example of a Porsche to illustrate good user experience design is because we want to explain that good user experience should make your users happy. It should make you happy. That's kind of the whole point. And UX design is about all of these tons of different things coming together. So if every person that made the Porsche, if anyone dropped the ball, the UX of the Porsche wouldn't be awesome. It's all these things coming together that really makes user experience design, because design is everyone's responsibility.
No, exactly. And I think one of the important things for us as developers to remember is that all the things that made that Porsche amazing can actually port it directly into the software world. So let's bring it from the Porsche world into the software world. Now, when we're in the software world, as developers, we think in terms of code. So let's look at all the code that we write as something that goes in this box. And let's say that all the code contributes to what's called the user experience of a particular application. So now if you take a little bit closer look at the chunks of code that we write, let's say that you have code that essentially puts pixels on a screen or interacts with the user in any way. This could be through audio input or audio output. Let's say that that is your UI code. Let's say the rest of the code that you write, stuff for your backend and so on, the non-visual code, that actually does not have an impact on the UI, but it does have a direct and strong impact on the UX. And that's something that we should always keep in mind.
So this is basically the difference between UI and UX. They're not synonyms, but they get thrown around a lot. So I think it's important to kind of disambiguate these two terms.
Yeah, exactly. The visual and non-visual code come together to deliver the user experience for your application, whereas the visual code almost exclusively delivers the user interface.
But the most important thing is that the overall UX should make your users feel happy.
Yeah, so think about an application that's made you happy. What has blown your mind by delivering an awesome user experience? Keep that app in mind, because we're going to be using that later on.
So this is another video that I am not going to show you during the lecture, but you can have, it will just emphasize on why that user experience is important. But what we need to understand is that this particular specific design, I mean, we have a button, then we have image view, then we have a list of some radio buttons. This is the graphical user interface. We have different components here. We have buttons, we have the image view, and then we have some radio buttons. So this is the UI design. And if we start running, I mean, if I just try it, because I have already built this particular specific user interface, you can see that I have a linear layout because everything is in the linear form. and then I put a button over there, that is this one. Then I put that particular specific image view, and then we have a scroll view in which I put that particular specific radio group in which we have those radio buttons and so on. So I have put all the things together here. If I just try to run this application again, I think that I need to bring that where is my emulator? If I just try to bring it here and just try to resize it, okay, so now you can see that I have this particular specific layout, okay, GUI design is fine, but when I click on this button, it is not doing anything. When I click on this particular specific, okay, we also have this some specific issue that this Charizard is not turning off by itself. We will see that why it is so. By default, I am making this particular specific button, the last button, it's here, okay. Okay, I don't want to do that. The last button here, I am here saying that this particular, where is the checked one, this particular specific property, I am saying that it should be true, but the point is it remains true even I'm trying to click on the other radio buttons. That we don't want to. This is not a good behavior. Right now we have not implemented any behavior behind the scene. Understand? So this is not a good, maybe it's a good design, user interface design, but we don't have a good user experience with this particular specific design. And if we want to have a good user experience, it means that what this particular application is expected to do, it should do those things. Then we have to implement those behavior behind the scene. So let me go back to my slides, okay. So now we have already designed this particular specific GUI design. So now what we can do, we have this image view, we have this particular button. Now we want to, again, look at that. I am defining these variables within my Java code. In my activity class, I'm defining these variables. Now the point is I need to connect this particular button with this one and the image view with this particular image view. What we are expecting, what we want to do, that whenever I click on that particular specific name of that particular different Pokemon character, this image change accordingly. If I click on the Blastoise, that become the image of the Blastoise. When I'm clicking on the Bulbasaur, it goes into the Bulbasaur image and so on. And when I click on that particular button, I want to perform some function. Right now, I will just show you a simple pop-up message that will happen as the click event of this particular specific button. But before we can do each and everything, we need to connect our variables, the button variable and the image view variable, with these two GUI components which exist in my GUI. And as I told you, remember that whenever you are running this particular specific line, set content view r.layout.activity_main. We have already talked about what is R, what is a layout, and then what do you mean by this activity_main. This is a constant integer value which has been defined in the layout class, which is the nested class inside the R class. We have seen that particular talk about it. Now, when we run this particular specific line of the code, what it will do, it will create the linear layout, it will create the button object, it will create the image view object, it will also create the radio group object, it will also create all these radio button object. Everything become a class object of its specific type. Button, image view, radio group, radio button, linear layout, all of these GUI component exist as a class object within our memory. Is it clear? We have talked about this one. Now what I want to connect these variables that we have defined in our Java code to these actual button object and the image view object or the radio button object, so that we can change their properties. we can change that particular image which is being shown here. When we click on this particular button, it will perform that specific task for us. Understand? So first thing is, all these GUI components exist in my memory, and now I want to connect those objects, the real objects which exist in my memory, I want to connect them with the variables. And for that, what we need to do, we have that particular specific find view by ID. Find view by ID. View is the object. Maybe it is a linear layout, maybe it is a button, maybe it is an image view, maybe it is a radio button or radio group, whatever it is. We want to find that particular specific view which exists in our memory using its ID. But provided that we have assigned that particular specific ID to those. So let me see, we have not assigned any ID yet. We have not assigned any ID. Remember that we have the ID property here. So I can connect with like ID. And this add the rate of plus ID. Just try to just enter it automatically. It will add the rate of plus ID. What will happen here? It will add this particular ID that we are going to define here. For example, my button. This particular my button name will be defined as a final integer value or constant integer value within the ID class within our R class automatically when we are defining the ID here. That becomes a constant integer value which is unique in this project. Understand? So that's why we say that add the rate of plus ID. It will automatically go into the ID class, which is the subclass or the nested class within the R class, and it will define this particular my button as a constant integer value. Do you understand? Okay. Similarly, we can try to what you can say that ID, and I said ID. This is my my image, whatever you name, you can give it here. And that will be again defined inside my R class. And the other thing is, look, when I have this thing, normally this should work. Normally, you say checked is equal to true. It means whenever this particular specific layout is automatically being rendered by the system, it will be checked. This particular specific checkbox or the radio button will be checked. It will be selected by default. And whenever we are going to use another one, it should automatically go away. But in some cases, like we have seen in our emulator, it is not going away. So we can't do something like this. So what we need to do? We need to access this particular specific radio button using our program inside my Java code, and then change that particular specific property checked to true. Understand? So we again, if we want to access this particular specific radio button inside our Java code, then we have to assign the ID. So we can say that Charizard radio button. I'm just Charizard radio button. I assign it. Now, once we have assigned these IDs to all the components which we want to access inside our Java code, we go into our Java code. This is our class. I'm just trying to global variable so that I can access in the multiple places, multiple functions and methods. And of course, this is not necessary. You know all these details, the global variable, the local variable within the method and so on. So I'm just trying to define it in the global level, at the class level, so that I can access in all multiple methods which we are going to define in this particular specific class. So we have a button. Again, look at that. Again, it's coming from android.widget. So if I just press enter, it will automatically import that particular specific button class, and then we can define the variable. So we say that my button. Again, I'm giving the same name as the ID. It is not necessary. You can say whatever, B1. No problem. Whatever name you want to give here, it is nothing to do with it must have the same name as my ID. ID can be a different name, this variable name can be a different whatever, no problem. Okay, then we also have the image view. Again, not image view, and then I say that my image, and then we also have that radio button, RB1, so on. And now, as you know, this onCreate method is just like your constructor, which is constructing when this particular specific activity is being created. If you want to initialize, like we have these 3 variables and we want to initialize them, we have to put that code here. So how we can do that? For example, I say that B1 is equal to find by view ID. We have assigned the IDs to each and every view button. We have assigned the ID. For the image view, we have assigned the ID. So we are trying to find that object which has already been created. Again, look at this particular point. We have already created those objects. Now we are just trying to find that object and connect it with our variable. It already exists in the memory. It is already there. So we are just trying to find that particular find by view ID, and then R, that is the resource file, resource class, dot ID, dot my button. Look, it is showing me that particular mic button. And if you look at the value here, it is -10003, and it is actually an integer value. It is automatically created a unique value to this particular number, and for us it is difficult to remember that number, but we can remember the names, just like we remember the names of our class fellows, but we can't remember their student ID, can we? Sometimes we don't remember our own ID. We have to find that particular, bring out that student ID card, and then see, okay, what is my ID? We can't remember. And these gadgets, these mobiles, has made them difficult. I remember that when I was a child, I was young in the school, I can remember the phone numbers of my friends, because at that time we don't have that kind of gadgets. So we have to remember those numbers, our relatives, our friends, our brothers, so that we can call them. Or maybe we have a diary in which we write all those numbers, and whenever we need to call them, we have to find out that thing. So for us as a human beings, it's our psyche that we can remember the names, we can't remember the numbers. So remember is the backend. For the Java, automatically assign a unique integer value to that particular name, and for them, for the Java, for the Android system, it is a number, but for us it's a name, ID, that we have assigned it. So I will select that particular my button, and now I say, so now what this particular line do, it will find out the button object which has been identified by this my button and assign it to the B1. That object is assigned to this particular specific variable. And then we can say that B1 dot, for example, set text. We can change its text, we can change that particular, we can do a lot of things. Set on click listener, set text, set accessibility, set, we can make it visibility, set visibility. You want to make it visible, you can disappear. It can disappear. Appear and disappear, no problem. You can just, by clicking some event, after that some specific thing, some specific components disappear from the screen. They are no longer there. You can do a lot of things now, because we can access all those methods within that particular button class. So we can do a lot of things. Okay. So similarly, we can say that my image is equal to, again, find by ID. Find by ID r dot id dot my image. And similarly, we also have that RB1 is equal to find by ID, and we can say that r dot id dot radio button. Look, it's showing me that Charizard radio button. I just type RAD, automatically it is trying to find out all those IDs that we have defined, which has contained the RAD inside it, and it will make our life easier. So now what we want to do, we want this particular radio button should be checked. Yes or no? Now we have, if we look at that, we have removed that particular. I don't want to do any changes here. Look, now it is not checked by default, but we are showing that particular specific Charizard image on that particular specific thing. We can change it. For example, I mean, here we are saying that Charizard, we can say that Bulbasaur. Then of course, this Bulbasaur should be selected, should be checked when it first appear. That specific GUI, when it appear on the screen, it should be checked because we are showing that particular specific image. Okay? But because we are showing the Charizard, so Charizard radio button should be checked. So what we can do? We have connected this particular Charizard radio button with our variable, that is RB1, that is radio button, and then RB1 dot set checked. Set checked, and then it will say that you need to provide a true. And if I now try to run this particular specific application, and now you will see that this particular specific problem that happened before, now it is behaving appropriately. It was not before. The Charizard remain checked, even I'm trying to select the other one. But the point is we need to change that particular specific image as well. Yes or no?
Yeah.
That we want. So we have multiple ways to do that. What is that? We also have a property on these particular radio buttons. I just try to show you more code here. Okay. So for example, I can have something like this. On click. That's a property. I say on click, and now we can give the name. For example, I say that this is the Arbok RB click. What I'm saying, I'm just defining an attribute or the property of the radio button within our GUI design and say on click. Actually, this should be the name of the method which will be called whenever we are clicking on that particular specific radio button. So this particular specific radio button, we can create a method here. No, it should be within the class. This is our on create method. So out of that one, within that particular specific class, we can say that it should be return me nothing, and then that name should be same. I can just copy and paste here, and then this particular method will take a view as an input. View. Okay. Okay, where is my, okay. Now if I go back, that particular red has gone. Why? Because now this particular Android Studio can find the method which is exactly the name as this one. It should not return me anything, but it should take a view as an input. Whenever I'm just going to delete it, it will show me the red line here. I mean, as I showed you, it should not return me anything. It must have the same name as we are defining in the onClick event, and it will take a one parameter view as an input. Either you go into the Java class that I have just did, go into the Java class, create that particular specific method, or we can just say Alt and enter. If I'm just on that particular, my cursor is on that particular method name, I'm pressing Alt enter. When I click on Alt enter, it say that you want to create this particular method in the main activity. When I select this one, automatically it creates that particular specific method. And the other thing is, now you can see that this particular method should be public, not, it should be public. It should be public. It should not return me anything. It is the name of the method should be exactly the same that we have defined inside the onClick event, onClick property, and it must receive a view as an input. And that view is representing the same radio button. object. It is the radio button object. If it is a button, it will be a button object. If it is a scroll view, it will be a scroll view object. Whatever that particular button in which that you have defined this particular specific what you can say that specific on click event, that view is coming as an input to this particular method. You understand? So now what I can do a lot of things. For example, we have initialized our image view. I say that my image view dot set image source. Change that particular image source, and it is taking that ID, which is an integer type. Okay, and because this one is the ARBOK, I can say r dot, we have a drawable dot ARBOK. I will do that, and I will show you. I have already put those particular images here inside my drawable folder. So everything that is here, it will automatically in my resource class, inside we have our nested class drawable, and inside the nested class these names has already been identified or given a unique integer value, constant unique integer values. I'm just using that particular specific information and changing that particular image from the Charizard to the ARBOK. Let me run it, and then you will see what's happening over there. Now when I click on the ARBOK, it should change the image. Fine, changing the image when I click on that. But if I click on the other part, of course, it is not going to work. Yes or no?
No.
Okay. Now we have different ways to implement the same behavior. Look, I can have like everywhere I can have a on click event and call like what is this one, the B drill, RB click event, and so on. On click, B drill, RB click, and then I can just press enter and create that particular specific method. Here again, I just try to take the same line from here, and then here I say that it should be a B drill, not the drawable. It will change that particular behavior. I have how many we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 different methods. Do you think it's a good idea? Yes or no, depending on the style. Maybe you say that okay, it will make my life easier.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
It's probably a bit.
But we can be more intelligent instead of our genius strategy saying yes, yes, yes. We can be more intelligent. We can make that particular specific code simple. We take only one method. As I told you that this particular method is whichever image, whichever button we have clicked, radio button we have clicked, it is coming as an input. It is coming as an input to this particular specific method, and we have that particular specific thing, that is view dot get ID. If we have assigned the IDs to each and every image view, radio button, then we can check that one, and based on which specific radio button is clicked, we can set the image to a different thing. Then we only need to write one method. Whenever we want to change, we only need to go into one method and make some changes, not the multiple methods. That will make our code more manageable. I mean, you have been studying the programming, so you know that all those how to intelligently code all the things. But yes, we can do that. So how we can handle? So first of all, I need to assign the IDs to each and every one. All radio buttons, I need to put the ID. So we can say that I at the rate of plus ID, and then I can assign that particular specific ID what? We can say that RBOK, RB and I'm just trying to copy paste and then putting it here, and then this one is the B drill, and then we have this one here, which is the Blastoise. We also have this one as a Bulbasaur, and then we also have this one. I'm just assigning the IDs to all of these. Butterfree, okay, and then we have the last one, that is the, we have already have this one. I think we can also make it like radio button to make it all these names standard, Butterfree, Charizard, RB, and of course we need to convert that into this one as well. So that should be the RB. Okay. Now what I will do, instead of having the different methods for each and every radio button, I am going to have one method. I can say that radio button clicked, and then I create that particular specific method, and here I will just remove all the other methods. I will just have this one, and then I will have the same method on all the radio buttons on click. On click, same method. I am defining these particular specific on click events with the same method. Not this one, on click, and then put that particular method name, on click, and put that particular specific method name. So now we have defined the IDs to each and every radio button. So what we can do, we can make a switch on what? View.get ID. Okay, and then case, what that? r.id.arbok. That's an integer value, and we put a break here as well, and then we need to set, what we need to do, we need to set my image dot set image resource r.drawable.arbok. That's what we need to do. If the ID of the view on which we have clicked, it is the arbok, then we set the image to this one. So let me copy paste, that will make my life easier. Okay, and then we have the B drill. I need to just change it to the B drill. Again, I just Blastoise. Again, I just try to make things happen like Blastoise. It is then we have the Bulbasaur, and then we have Butterfree, and then last one I think we have the Charizard. Wow, now I have written only one. This view is the view on which we have clicked. The click event has been performed. We are trying to get the ID of this particular view, as we have already assigned the IDs to everyone. We are checking that if this particular ID is RB, it is going to change the image from the arbok, and so on. Now if I just try to run this particular specific method here, okay, I just try to make it default option, so every time it is going to run it here. Okay, what's happened? It's trying to open the other one. Okay, I don't want to do that. I come back here, try to run it. It is this one, and then we can say that this. Yep. So now if we just try to change, everything is working perfectly as we want. One method. Is it clear? The other thing is that we need to implement the click event for this particular specific method. So we have seen this thing that we can just simply define the on click. We give the name of the method which is going to handle that on click on click event. We can do the same thing here as well for the button. On click my button clicked, and then we can create that particular specific method on click. And then here we can say that I can say that toast dot make text. It will take few. What is the context? The second is the message. Message on the clicked event of button, and then how long you want to display. It's a pop-up message. I will show you. That's a pop-up message, how long you want to display. So we can say that toast dot, you have two values, either 0 and 1. They have been defined as a constant inside the toast class. You can select, you want to say it long or short. I say short, long, and then I say dot show. It will show that particular specific text view. If I just try to do that, and you can see if I click on that particular event, it is showing me that particular specific message. It will stay for a little longer time. If I just try to short, it will less time as compared to this one. And then we have this particular specific clicks. We can click on different things. So in the last 3 lectures, we have seen that how we can define this particular GUI design. You know that very well now. You need more practice, of course. Practice makes a man perfect. But now we have the on-click events of these specific methods. Even we can define something on whenever I'm clicking on that image view, we can apply over there as well. For example, we have the image view, and here I say that on-click again image click, and then again I can create. Okay, let me do another way. Instead of having that on click event, I just go into the program. We have defined that particular specific. We have initialized, and then I say that my image dot set on click listener. On click listener, I say that new on click listener, and look, actually it has created the same method. It should be a public method. It does not return anything, and it takes the view as an input. And here we can define toast dot make text. The context is this, and then we can give the message image is clicked, and then I can say that toast dot I will let me select the short and then show. It's saying that it text. I think we can say that get application context. This is not going to work because it is inside that particular specific method. Inside we are creating that particular specific on click listener, new view we are creating, and inside we have overridden this particular method. So this representing this particular specific on click listener class. But here we need to provide the application context. So we have this particular specific method which is going to get the application context. Understand? So again, if I just try to images clicked, if I just try to run this thing, and then you can see that whenever I'm clicking on that particular image, it is showing me that particular specific. We can do whatever we want. This method is a little bit complex. So we are saying that okay, we are going to become a little bit cumbersome. Yes or no? The other way is quite simple. You just have that particular on click property and do it, creating a method and implement it. That become a little bit complex, but remember that not all the events that we can perform on those views, they cannot have the properties for each and every one. So if you want to implement some other events on that, for example, we have the spinner drop down menu, So that is clicking on that one and selecting a different one. That's not a click event. So we have to have different way to implement those events which are not available as a property or as an attribute to those views. So this is the way. Set on click listener, set on change things, set on focus. Whenever that particular specific image button is becoming in focus, what we want to perform. Out of focus, get out of focus, we want to perform something. So not all the events which are available just like on click. On click is the simplest, the main thing. Whenever we almost every image view or every view or every widget or every GUI component will have that particular specific on click, but not the other events. So if you want to implement the other events, this is the way to implement them. Understand? Is it clear? So let me stop this particular specific video so that we can make the second one later.